My name is Bill Brush, and I'm the president and founder of Cut Unnecessary Regulatory Burden. Duplication of regulation. I've been asked many times, without the Shoreline Management Plan, what would happen to Smith Mountain Lake? Without Appalachian Power, who would look out for water quality, control development, and manage the lake for our benefit? Who would protect our investment? Well, regulation is the topic of this presentation. You will learn there are other alternatives, better alternatives that respect property rights without APCO's heavy-handed, overreaching Shoreline Management Plan regulations. As you can see, there are plenty of regulators and even more regulations. In 1960, Appalachian was licensed by the Federal Power Commission, now the FERC, to construct and operate the Smith Mountain Project for electrical generation. Between 1960 and 1966, Appalachian constructed and the Federal Power Commission supervised. Once the project filled in March of '66, Appalachian Power focused upon the business of generating electricity, and its regulator regulated that operation. The surrounding counties and the state agencies moved to the forefront. Local governments built a road network, guided development, zoned the lands, regulated dock construction, and funded the installation of lighted navigational markers. State agencies built the state park and the public boat launches. Virginia conservation officers patrolled the lake to keep boaters safe. The Smith Mountain Lake Association monitored water quality, and the Marine Fire Department organized to protect citizens and their property on and off the waters. For the most part, the other federal agencies remained in the background, relying upon the Commonwealth and the localities to protect citizens, protect the environment, and chart the course for Smith Mountain Lake. And Appalachian Power did what they do best, generate electricity and overcharge us for its use. In February 1998, at the insistence of FERC, APCO agreed to take on additional responsibilities by regulating and permitting private and public uses within the project. This is when we began to see the gradual rise to prominence of FERC and APCO as they developed the Shoreline Management Plan and planned for a new operating license to be awarded in 2010. Appalachian began to court our state agencies, and these agencies became influential in proposing shoreline management regulations. The counties that had managed the project to this point faded into the background. Other federal agencies like the Coast Guard, the Corps of Engineers, also took a back seat as the SMP was developed. Now we are at post-2003. The Shoreline Management Plan and its new rules were unilaterally imposed under the false pretense of superior federal authority. These new rules duplicated most of the existing regulation, conflicting with some, pushed our elected governments to the sidelines, stole our deeded property rights, and replaced them with revocable permits. Why would all of the regulators and their regulations simply move to the background? The fact is, all of these regulations exist today, just as they did from 1960 through 2003. In 2002, APCO hired a consultant to boat around the shoreline and to decide what shoreline should be used for what purposes. They studied current land use with aerial photos and determined the best use for the shoreline. The counties called this zoning, and under the Code of Virginia, has the responsibility and the authority to plan for and control land use and development for all lands within the county. APCO called it shoreline classification. Shoreline stabilization. The Corps of Engineers for years controlled nationwide Permit 13, allowing citizens to stabilize their shorelines to prevent erosion. Shoreline owners have the right to stabilize up to 500 linear feet of shoreline with riprap or walls without a permit from the Corps. We didn't need Shoreline Management Plan regulations to dictate how riprap is placed and to tell us to use alternative methods like plantings or coconut rolls or even woody debris, which don't work, which require more maintenance and cost a lot more. The Army Corps of Engineers are also experts in dredging. Nationwide Permits 19 and 35 permit landowners and marinas to routinely dredge small amounts of material to maintain water depth around docks and within the marina's basins. And the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality makes sure that the dredge material is removed from the project to protect our water quality. The Army Corps of Engineers literally wrote the book on wetlands. Their delineation and protection is the national standard and the law followed by Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. But APCO consultants identified wetlands from a boat using the visual method. It looks like a wetland, so therefore it must be a wetland. Land disturbance outside and within the project boundary is controlled by state code and implemented by the counties for erosion and sediment control and stormwater management. County building inspectors enforce uniform statewide building codes to guide all construction and have the expertise to ensure compliance. We don't need SMP dock regulations. We need to use the existing realistic regulations written and enforced by the county. Navigation is the responsibility of the United States Coast Guard. And the counties are all about public safety. The Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and the United States Coast Guard protect us on and off the water and have the authority to do so. FERC tells us the Commission has regulatory authority only over the licensee and thus can administer and enforce the terms of the license only through the licensee and the licensee's state property rights. Project boundaries are used to delineate the geographic extent of the lands, the waters, works, and facilities that the licensee identifies as comprising the licensed project and for which the licensee must hold the rights necessary to carry out project purposes. In 1960, with the award of the initial license, APCO negotiated flowage easement deeds with shoreline landowners. APCO got the right to flood the land for the purpose of constructing dams and power stations to generate electricity. Shoreline landowners retained ownership and the right to use their land for any purpose, so long as they did not impact APCO's ability to flood, operate, and maintain the project for power generation. Since APCO had no responsibility to manage the shorelines, they didn't, and they honored the terms of their flowage easement agreements until 1998. We know that deeded rights cannot be changed by the SMP. The only way to change deeded rights is by mutual agreement between the two parties. In 2013, FERC wrote, "Whatever rights an entity has in lands within the project boundary, whether conferred by deed, lease, easement, or other conveyance, will not be altered by our action regarding this SMP." And in 2014, FERC Chairman wrote Congressman Robert Hurt, "Please note that the SMP applies only to the lands in the project boundary where Appalachian has property rights. The licensee has no authority to regulate construction on privately owned lands unless the property owner has given the company those rights." So how is it that APCO claims it has the authority to cancel our property rights? How is it that APCO insists we only ever had rights to a revocable permit? Where do they get the right to determine what is in the public interest and can order removal of our docks? How? They misrepresented to the regulator they had these rights so they could get a new 30-year license. Just because they signed up for these responsibilities doesn't give them the rights to invoke a shoreline management plan on private property they don't control. Summing things up, we've learned that for the last 4 decades before shoreline management, APCO did nothing to regulate shoreline or private use of the lake. Plenty of regulations were in place, and multiple agencies and governments were enforcing those existing regulations. APCO's SMP is nothing more than a new layer of duplicate and often inconsistent regulation that steals our property rights. Should the SMP go away tomorrow, existing regulations are proven to be more than sufficient to chart a course for Smith Mountain Lake, and even better, these existing regulations respect our property rights rather than steal them. It feels and it sounds like extortion, legally defined as obtaining the property of others with their consent induced by wrongful use of actual or threatened force, violence, or fear, or under the color of official right. What can we do to protect our lake and our property? I suggest you consider donating to C.U.R.B. C.U.R.B is a 501c4 Virginia not-for-profit corporation dedicated to educate and inform the Smith Mountain Lake community about the importance of property rights and how to protect them. Your donation helps support educational efforts as well as helps to fund ongoing litigation that AEP brought against a citizen and future litigation we may have to bring against the FERC. Donations remain anonymous and cannot be discovered. Thank you, and please consider a donation to support C.U.R.B as we work to save your property rights.